We are sitting here as people who facilitate change for individuals and for workplace. And what that means in a nutshell is, if you imagine that there was a bridge and you are here now, and it's like 2020 for an example, that's the old, it's gone, but it hurts us still. And it hurts us less and less when we cross the bridge, when we walk over to the new. But the issue is, where's the new? What's the new? So, welcome. It's been, how long? It's been a couple of months since the almost inception or conception, and a couple of months since, if I want to bring it down a notch, just this feeling of needing to do a little more about speaking about the work that we do, but not for the purpose of just having a chat, really for the purpose of getting more people to extract and to find and to discover value from what I believe is, I want to say it's a state secret, or it feels a lot like a state secret, the work that we do. So this is the very first episode of, it doesn't even have a name yet, so I'm not even going to get into naming it, but it's the very first episode of, shall we call it the Reinvention Academy Africa? Are we going to go there? We're going to be talking just a little bit about where we come from, where we're going, and why with this mindset, methodology, and toolkit in our backpack. So I want to cast our minds back to 5 years ago. We all know it was COVID. We all know it was a pandemic. And I think my question now, for all of us, including even myself to some extent, it was a pandemic year. There was lots going on. I think you, without needing to be taken back there, find yourself there in an instant. If we say 2020, you can connect with exactly what you were feeling like, with exactly what decisions you were sitting with, what decisions you were facing. You know exactly what you knew at the time, and you knew exactly what you didn't know. You also were faced with one very big choice, which was to take money out of your pocket and pay for a certification to become a reinvention practitioner. So if you take yourself back to that moment in time, what on earth made you do that in the year of a pandemic, where you might not even have known whether or not you have a customer?
Yeah, so for me it was actually 2022, so it is coming out of the pandemic. But the pandemic obviously taught all of us about disruption and uncertainty, and having to emerge from that, considering how does one build the capacity to bounce back, create new meaning. So when I was exposed to Reinvention, my first lab might have been in 2021. This is the Reinvention lab led by Dr. Nadia, our founder. And so there were a couple of things that really emerged for me there that made me decide that I love the framework because it integrates with everything else I knew. And yeah, I think as we go, after Liezl gave a story, I'll share a bit more as to what particularly triggered me to want to then acquire the skill and acquire the certification, which is something quite a big decision, but a decision that I would happily reflect on as a pivotal decision in my career and in my life. In fact, it was quite huge for my family as well. Thank you.
So beyond Franklin.
Adeliah, I think my journey also started in 2022, and it started actually with a post that you made on LinkedIn.
People read my stuff.
So coming from also COVID and within the skills development sector disruptions, especially during COVID period, I was at a dead end of how and what next because of skills development changes and limitations put through the lockdowns and the actual budget shortages for skills development. And that Sunday evening I was saying, I really don't know where. And then somebody said, but look at Adeliah's post, contact her, I know her, maybe connect with her, there's something about the lab. I contacted you that Monday morning, and that evening I attended my first lab. And on that Saturday it wasn't really a choice, it was just a commitment. And since then I think I found the language that I was looking for things that I've been doing for 30 odd years. Always adjusting, always reinventing is a new language that I got from that lab. Reinventing to stay focused on the current and the actual need. So it just opened up a lot of language and opportunities for myself. So also 2022 was the year that I got this opportunity to be brought into this language and totally new community.
I want to ask you how you felt when you got when you knew that moment when you got the cost for the course, and you don't have to disclose what it was, but I'm talking about cost in the context of a pandemic. When you discovered what the cost of this price of the certification program was, you had to make a very big purchasing decision right there. What made you do that?
I also calculated the cost of not doing it, and I didn't see any other option. Yes, the cost was quite something to consider, but being supported and pulled into conversations of how to rethink that, just asking different questions. I calculated the cost of not doing it to be far more than putting that monthly fee aside to become a certified reinvention practitioner.
So interesting that you say that, because when you spoke of opportunity cost, I was thinking, well, at the time for me, if I might share my story, was there seemed so little opportunity. So what was there before the purchasing decision in terms of opportunity was suddenly gone. But nowhere else that I looked for opportunities could I find any. So just a little bit of how I got here, the same question that I'm going to answer for myself is 2020, it was February, when we learned that the world was going to go into lockdown. I was quite comfortable. That would have been, and it was, my 4th time that I was retrenched in my career. So for me, it felt like a retrenchment, but on a large scale, although I wasn't on the list at the time. I knew that it was coming. So I knew that for me to stay calm and just to figure out how to repackage myself was a necessity. And I sat there and I looked at, what did you do over the past 20 years? So take a walk down my CV. What could I pull out of that and make fresh, make it relevant? And that was the easy question. But the hard question was, make relevant for who? Who's got money to pay now for anything that I've got to offer them? Certainly not manufacturing at the time, which is where I was sitting at the time. Certainly the industry with the most, not the only industry, but an industry with a lot of need for it, but certainly not the budget or the willingness to do it. Or maybe they just didn't have the understanding for what it was going to bring. Everybody was sitting with a lot of questions. So for me, it really was also about, oh gosh, if it wasn't for Gary Graham, who came along and said, Adeliah, there's this 12-week program that I want you to, jump in. It sounded to me like it was ICF coaching. It was another one of Gary's programs, which each one of them served me incredibly well. And for me to sort of give myself a distraction from the uncertainties, I thought, well, jump into this thing. Into the 12-week program, and then about week 2 or 3, it started feeling a lot like the business incubation programs in the enterprise development sector. And I thought, are we on the same path? Because I know what's going to happen at the end of a business incubation program. I might have an MVP, I might have a new business, but it's going to cut short right there, because I still don't have the customer, same issue I had before joining the program. I then went into a state of, what's the word I'm looking for, Franklin, where you're a little skeptical of where this is going, but trust in the person. I suppose for me it was the person. Trusted the process, didn't tell him that I feel skeptical. I was just showed up like the student and I put it to the test. I said, if I don't launch this business in December and I don't see real customers showing up paying real money, then I know this program is not for me. A business launched on the 12th of December. I'm not going to go into the details because we don't have a lot of time, but real customers pitched up, 26 of them with real money, and they spent most of the day with me. And they said they wanted some more of this. All I thought at the time was, the stuff works. So it wasn't hard for me to say, I'm going to go do the full certified program. And I think common thread there was a sense of not having opportunities, not seeing a lot of hope for ourselves as individuals. And I can just imagine what you might have felt like for your customers. So
so I just wanted to unpack a little bit
Yes.
on that process for me, because I've come off a career of C-suite positions, etc., and having done a lot of things, but find myself as a independent consultant, leveraging of a lot of frameworks, including the likes of lean startup and design thinking and all that good stuff. And so, as you said, it's about the language that resonates. And for me, the biggest catch was recognizing the pattern of life cycles. So the life cycle story, and just in a nutshell, as you all know, really about understanding that the story that in the 80s and 90s, the average life cycle of a business was 75 years from beginning to end, and how that shifted to 15 years, and now it's 6, 4, 5 years, depending on the industry. That just really resonated with me, and therefore helped me make sense as to why things needed to change all the time. Obviously, I could connect it to how the world is changing at the tech level, but also what we see now is so much conflict and so much shifts in what the norm is, what the standard is of what it means to do the right thing. But most importantly, how to have significant impact in the lives of many people. So reinvention was the framework and the language that now helped me to make sense from a particular lens, understanding that nothing is forever. I mean, we talk about the Titanic story and how the Titanic is the antithesis of reinvention. You know, just how important it is to understand that as your environment changes, you can't stay the same. And in particular, where I deal a lot with business, we need to connect with clients and customers, but not just to connect, but to stay connected and to stay competitive, and being able to link it right back to being competitive, and how the reinvention lens encourages you to think through what is, what was, what works, what doesn't work, and almost gives you a license to experiment, to be creative, and to apply creative thought in a way that you test your ideas, you know, in a way that you don't take anything for granted. You don't have to lose anything that's working, but you'd rather bring in what new possibilities that can actually give you a new growth cycle. So those are the things that hit home for me, and it made it imperative for me to jump on board, because I wanted the skill set, I wanted to enrich my own skill set, and I wanted to bring it to the world, to my markets, to my clients, and to my communities.
You are speaking and I want to write, but I also want to listen on the points that are so crucial. So I'm going to put this down and promise not to write them, and just ask you about the very important thing that's, I kept hearing in my brain going, why? So get new skill sets, yes. Be more relevant, yes, but why? Get a new set of tools kits, yeah, okay, but why? You mentioned the 75 years, and just for those who are listening, we were talking about, what decade was that? Just before?
It was the last century. Obviously, at the turn of the century,
Yes.
things started to change. And because I've spent most of my career in the tech space, I have an acute awareness of so-called Moore's laws, and these are just how capacities keep accelerating through exponential change.
Yeah.
So that I understood, but to make that connection to real life situations, real business situations, that was for me the key. So say, okay, now how do we get access to tools, frameworks that allow you to think through it and to process that information in a way that you can actually start to test and experiment with new things, without holding too tightly to what I used to be or what I used to know, but recognizing we're here because we want to serve, we want to deliver, we want outputs. And if what we used to do no longer serves, have the courage to make the shift. And so those are the things that is really important to me, is to tap into the courage to make shifts.
Love it. And the why, Liezl, I'm going to ask you about your why also, in terms of your clients. You know, I know why we do this for ourselves. It was a means of becoming more relevant. It sometimes was a way. It was another path that we were almost forced into. It was do or die in the pandemic year for me personally. And for me, at one point, I sat there and I thought, well, if I'm going through this, who else is going through it? It's pretty much everybody at the time. So if I'm going to gain skills that are going to help me be more relevant, surely my clients at that time, they were non-existent, is going to need that too. That's my why. And then I remember doing a online with you facing the manufacturing sector. And I remember you mentioned the Titanic, and then we used a more now, I won't say analogy, but it was actually real. Was it the
Evergreen.
The evergreen
That got stuck in the canal.
Please tell that story, because yes, the Titanic is critical, but the evergreen, I just knew about the vessel that got stuck along the Suez Canal and it caused major disruption.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes. And then Liezl and I were looking at this thing and went, yes, this looks amazing because this is current. This is hitting us hard now. And then for that ship or that vessel to be named Evergreen was just such a, I don't know, punch in the ribs. It was, my goodness, what exactly does that mean for businesses? If you don't mind, just spend a minute or so, what you think it might mean for businesses with all of that stuff stuck on that vessel. You know?
I think, yeah, you put me on the spot and take me back very long now for that session.
Yeah.
But I think what stood out for me at that stage is to realize that realities happen, things happen. If we are stuck in our old ways of problem solving, of trying to get this vessel to move, we might get stuck for a very long time. So we needed new mindsets, new ways of thinking, new ways of problem solving. And I think at the end of the day, people had to make sure that they know what impact that vessel that was stuck for months, what impact that would have on their business. And if they stuck to their old ways of thinking and problem solving, they would have gone out of business. So they had to make different arrangements around that reality. I think, but if I can come back to the mindset, because if we look at those S-curves and the movements of organizations and companies into different ways, and even in our own lives, everything comes back to mind shift. Because if we stay in the same context, we can think the same way. But the moment we are put in a different context, we need to think differently. And I think that is what I find in my client system currently, is the first step before I enter any deeper work with them, is we need to make sure that they understand why they find themselves currently in that position. So a lot of my initial work with clients is on mind shift or mindset, and that is one of the pillars, as well of one of our tools, and that starts with each individual person. If we get stuck in our own stress during a pandemic or during whatever crisis we went through, and we are not able to move forward, then nothing else can move forward.
We talk about that mindset a little bit more. Like, what is the mindset that you need in the current situation? Or begin with, what is the mindset that's not going to serve you? For anybody listening. I know a lot of the time a client might call and say, oh, I need this and I need that. So we need the change. We need this new thing to happen. So here's this new framework, or here's this new intervention. But the mind, the ability to adapt very quickly is not there. So it's hurry up, but go slowly, please, is what I'm finding a lot of the time, which tells me clients have needs. But what's blocking them from actually generating progress for things that they've paid for?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
From
please
my
go.
experience, what I find is that a lot of client systems, and this is individuals and
Yeah.
groups and big companies, we really get caught up in our own past successes,
Yeah.
or what we consider to be past successes. And sometimes it's not even past successes, but just what we know,
Yeah.
what we're comfortable
Yeah.
with. And what we in the reinvention community is able to access or encourage is to look for different perspectives and to almost give permission to start questioning the things that we used to. Because our story with the Titanic that we keep referring to was exactly that. When it set sail, it was supposed to be too big to fail, right? And hence they were able to cut corners, and there was a level of arrogance. So it's either a mix of arrogance or sometimes it's paralysis because we're so scared of anything being different, right? Because we're scared of the unknown. And as you said, Liezl, it's one of our core pillars in the reinvention framework, mindset, followed also obviously by culture and systems, in understanding how collective mindsets inform the way we behave in terms of culture, and how the systems which as I always say, it's more than just the tech systems. It's really about how power shows up in a organization or in a team, in a system, or even what's holding you back, what's allowing you to let go. So the mindset part is almost the part that unlocks new thinking. And if we're lucky, it unlocks the opportunity for us to then be more free in the way we think and the way we learn. It allows us to listen.
So I'm going to try and make this a little more visual for those who are listening to us this morning. There is an invisible checklist hanging here somewhere. It's your checklist.
Yes.
I'm your potential client, or Liezl's your potential client. And I know that as facilitator, the first thing that we're listening for and looking for is whether the mindset is there and how much of work we need to do on mindset for a new client or an existing client. So when you're listening, you're either actively asking those questions or you're listening to what people are saying. And as facilitator, you're making a little note to self about how much of mindset that I need is present and how much is not. What are the characteristics of that mindset that you look for, or that you might tell me, brush up on these things, please, before we can begin?
Yeah, so for me, it's a process. It's not even about telling it. It's about more creating awareness.
Yeah.
So unless within the system there's an awareness of where we are and what's holding us back, right? And yes, so the awareness would shift, would allow for the mind shift to happen. Because really, you can't tell somebody you must change your mind, because that in fact would just encourage more resistance. But if we and that's what we do, is we create awareness and we create self-reflection, allow inter-reflection across members of the team. And like just this week, sitting with a client who's trying to manage a situation where there's conflict in the team because it's style differences and role differences, etc. The biggest value we can bring to a situation is awareness.
Yeah.
Because the awareness allows the individuals in the system agency to shift.
Yeah.
Because shift doesn't happen from outside, but it happens from inside. And so for me, if we fail to create the awareness, we're not going to move forward much here. I don't know what's it for you.
I've got an example of a client system.
Yes.
So I went to this not-for-profit organization. They were almost closing their doors. And I went into their inner works and sat with the entire staff for 2 days. And I started with exactly that. So I've started with a session where I help them to understand what skills I am bringing to the room. So in my introduction, I introduced every role I've had over the past few decades of working in different contexts. And I asked them, so if I was a lecturer, what skills do you think I needed? And they listed it, and we made notes. And I said, and then I went and I started my own business. What skills did I need? Oh, this. Then I went into monitoring and evaluation, and we came up with a skills list of my own experience. And I asked them, take 10 minutes, list your CV experience and what skills did you need. So I started with that individual awareness. And I can mention this because I've got the go-ahead from the client system, but there was a bus driver at the organization that was just to fill the gap.
Oh, I love the real stories.
Just to fill the gap, to make us a little bit more people around the table, because it was a small office. And the bus driver went through the same thing. And at the end of that 2-day workshop, I got some feedback, and then we moved them to understand, but as a group, they have a lot of skills. If they look at what skills they need to pull themselves out of this hole and get them to start going again, what skills do they need? And they started to build a skills wall, a combined skills wall, and say, if we put all our skills together as an organization, where are the gaps that we can still fill? And where are the skills very strong? The second day, just before we stopped, the bus driver stood up, and when we got feedback, he said, you know what? In one of my previous roles, I was an office manager. What we need is an office manager. And he stood up. 2-3 months later, the feedback came in, that office is thriving. Wow. Because one person was reminded of his own skills and his own experience, and for that context, that became relevant. And the organization pulled themselves out because they was made aware that the context changed. They need to dig deeper.
Liezl, I want you to stay with the skills, because the skills, they're critical for each individual in a system to understand what have I got here right now. And that here right now is not just budget, this, that, the tangible things. It's very much inside the skills as well. That's also a resource. But before we go more into that, or before we move on, I wanted to ask you about the bus driver. So he found out that he's got this set of skills that he maybe put on ice or didn't think he needed to use anymore. But there was something else that needed to be present for him to be able to realize that, I've got the skills. But what made him actually jump into action? As somebody was listening in on the workshop that you were facilitating. And so early on, I tried to build a visual of a checklist, but maybe if you could build a wall, a really solid, or a foundation, and you were to, let's use Lego as an example. If you could build a mindset wall, what should each brick in that wall represent if you had the opportunity to build a perfect mindset wall for reinvention?
I don't think it's only one or two things. I think it's I'm focusing a lot on micro skills at the moment, because each skill that we contribute to that bigger picture and understanding adds value. So if it is team building, or if it is problem solving, or clarity of mind, or creativity, each of those small building blocks need to be just energized again, because we all have some kind of creativity in us. But if it's not appreciated in the context, then we might not get to that point where we build up the bigger picture.
Yeah, so I'd love for us to, in possibly future episodes, unpack this, because I think it's so important how the dynamics within the team. And if you have leadership from the top who thinks they know it all, then it's almost like they're blind to the skills mix that's there. Because what I find that the most powerful work is done when we give everybody agency to be their best and to feedback to the organization, especially when it's client-facing, explore specifically those team dynamics that will actually bring the various, not the skills, but the agency to the fore.
So we've got 30 seconds. 30 seconds to build a mindset wall.
Sure.
I'm going to put the first block. You must be curious. What else must you be?
Ask different questions.
Yeah? What have you got there?
For me, it's all about being focused on mission. In other words, how leaders inspire others who actually either customer-facing or mission-facing, community-facing, give them the agency to tell us, actually, this is where we should be going.
I'm going to add, thank you, I'm going to add not just the ability to experiment, but the appetite to experiment. Because all of this is wonderful. But if the client doesn't have those key competencies, or at least the willingness and the appetite to gain, to make or to build their own little mindset wall or their own foundation, then everything we bring takes longer.
And I can add progress over perfection.
Absolutely.
Which is exactly what we're doing here today. Were we perfect? Are we perfect podcasters? I want to ask. I don't know how you feel. I feel like after a couple of minutes that we...
But it is really about recognizing that change comes when you try different things.
When you just get into it,
and
when you do it.
Just do it, but then learn from it.
Which is precisely what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to ask this question. You've had a couple of clients, and you've had a couple of clients. I think me less so than you. Think of a client where you walked in as facilitator and you knew that the work that you're imparting and the knowledge you're imparting with them is going to take a little longer because the mindset stuff is not quite there yet. Think about that client. Don't obviously name them, but do tell us what you felt was missing. When you realize that mindset needs work. Yeah. What were those cues for you?
Yeah, so in fact, there are clients that I would then terminate because there's no evidence of an open mindset.
Okay.
And then, of course, clients we're eager to learn, absorb what's being discussed, and it's less so about them listening to what I'm saying, but them being prepared to listen to themselves and discover for themselves what's holding them back. Right, so I think I tend to observe for patterns of behavior, and where clients are really keen and ready to take on something that's different to what they've been doing up to that point, then you see the shift in not just performance but in outcomes, and that's been my experience with clients who have an open mindset.
Can you please recall one? You must have one that you wanted to walk away from.
I actually want to respond differently. I want to say that I came to a moment where I realized my planned program need to be second in line.
Yes.
Because the need is different in the room.
Absolutely.
And mostly that is because of the mindset. That's either not focused yet enough for the room to move forward, or it's just not there yet. They don't understand the need.
What did it sound like? What did it sound like? What was said that made you realize it's missing?
It sounds like we know it. Why do we need this? We don't need this workshop.
Always done.
I was very specifically in a client system where we planned the 2 days. I walked in and they wanted to stick to the program. And after 2 or 3 short sessions, introduction, they came to me and said, but do we really need this workshop? And I said, exactly because you asked that question. You actually need another one after this.
Isn't that interesting? I'll pay you money to help us change, but don't make me uncomfortable, please.
Yes.
Just let me do what I've always been doing.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I'll change as long as I still do what I need to do.
So as long as I stay right here.
Exactly. As long
I think
as
we
I
need
keep
more
doing
coffee
what I
for
used
this
to
we
do.
do need more coffee.
Yeah,
and we're going to come back after the break and we're going to have a lot more conversation around maybe a little shift away from mindset and maybe a little bit more into what you wanted to share.
Organizations,
and as well as the tools, maybe a little bit of that.
Sure.
All right, so we're back from a bit of a coffee break. Hope you enjoyed yours. Did you?
Yes, still do.
All right. I want to, just for those who might have missed the first half of the show, just quick recap. So we began by speaking or answering a question around what on earth made you spend money on a reinvention certification or a program. We spoke then a little bit more about mindset. So to bring it down a little bit, it's not mindset in its global sense, but what is the mindset that a client, an individual or an organization, in the language we use as a system, that is necessary to build the foundation for us to look at as facilitators, look at what mindset is currently and decide for ourselves, this client is ready for the program that I've developed for them or designed for them, or this client is not. And we use the little analogy of building blocks. You liked foundational blocks,
Yes.
Franklin. So just for those who missed the first half, just a quick one. What are those building blocks? I know we said curiosity.
Yes.
We spoke about openness to learning and experimenting. And yeah, take us a bit, just for another minute or so, let's talk about that mindset.
Yeah. So I think it's really what we've discussed around mindset work. But I think if you see the mindset work as part of the Reinvention Pillars framework, where we talk about, it's how we think and how that either stifles us or allows us space to grow or to learn. Then how we behave in terms of the Reinvention cultures is whether we can, in organizational systems in particular, create space for new ideas, for experimentation, for acknowledgement of stuckness or acknowledgement that things are not working. And then, of course, the systems that keep things together. Then in the core, from a reinvention point of view, we really work with 3 core elements in terms of a skill. And then that speaks to how do we anticipate the next waves of change. And that's different for different people, but there are certain ways that we recommend you learn and that you can keep an eye out for what might happen next. We know disruptions when it hits us. The key is not to be completely thrown off your axis when it happens. So it's about anticipating change, and then how do you design your own change, as opposed to just changing what you were doing. Can you, in fact, design change that would impact the broader system and implement? And so implement of change is, for me, certainly as a practitioner, implementation of change assumes that we never know the future. We don't know where it's going to happen, but we know what we know now. We know where the disruption comes from now. So we give ourselves the license to try different things, to experiment with different things, with an idea that as we implement, it's a test, it's an experiment. Where there's evidence, we run with it. Where there's evidence of it not working, we acknowledge it's okay, it was a bad idea, or it didn't work. And so the implementation is informed through a series of experimentation. In fact, in our tools, we call it short sprints. So a sprint with clear goals, clear actions, and then a review of what's happened. But the heart of reinvention is really about increasing the level of life in a system. So those are our foundations. And when we say increasing the level of life in a system, that could be a system in an individual, where I just want to be better than what I was yesterday, or my environment be better, or from a team, so that, because there's no such a thing as being stagnant. When you're stagnant, you're actually going backwards because your context is moving so much faster forward. So our game is really increasing life.
You've just triggered something for me now. And it sounds like this. Doing nothing is also a choice.
Exactly.
And sometimes doing nothing is not because I've sat here with the problem I have as a business or as an individual and chose to do nothing. I just don't know how to do something.
Yes.
So I become not necessarily complacent, but I'm stuck. So I'm just going to do nothing until something comes to me. But this is exactly where that red book comes in. There's stuff in there. It's exactly what you spoke of now. It's what do we need to be able to give to individuals and to organizations to help them realize? Because it's not about what we give them. We can stand in front of a system or in front of a group of people and facilitate until we blue in the face. And it might not land because we haven't helped them to become unstuck. So for those who only joined us now, before the break, we are sitting here as people who facilitate change for individuals and for workplace. And what that means in a nutshell is, if you imagine that there was a bridge and you are here now, and it's like 2020 for an example, that's the old, it's gone, but it hurts us still. And it hurts us less and less when we cross the bridge, when we walk over to the new. But the issue is, where's the new? What's the new? How do we help a client understand what that newness is when the client themselves doesn't know?
And do you know how we can get people unstuck, their minds unstuck, by asking different questions?
Exactly.
So one question I would ask my client is, what would you attempt today if you knew you couldn't fail? Because if we try that, we don't know what the outcome would be, but that is an experiment.
Exactly.
And we don't have to stick to that. We can change again and ask the same question again and get to a different result. So if I can make that practical and take us back to the bus driver organization, I think
The
what
infamous bus driver.
when you started to talk about the foundations, I could see all of those elements
Coming through. Yeah.
come through, because we started with that idea of this person recognizing himself as being more than what his current context allows him to be. And then the rest of the organization also allowed him to be part of that process.
Yeah.
And then they started to design according to the strengths of each individual person. And when they allowed that, he came up and started to design new programs that put that organization in a different and a better space,
Wow.
creating life again for an office that was almost closing down, and creating more value for their clients that brought more people to them. And from there, they started to implement. They rearranged the entire
Yes.
building.
Wow.
As you enter, you see products that they already made. Then you go to other spaces where initially you walked into a very busy room, and now they changed something, they implemented it, and everything changed. And people started to respect each other's strengths and the roles that they played. And it was just that different question.
Yeah.
Where can I bring who I am, my superpower, into this system? But for that, we need that openness
Absolutely.
to be able to rearrange ourselves.
So I'm a little curious now, and I'm curious on behalf of those who are listening. So that bus driver sounded like he made a shift from a place of scarcity, I don't have, we don't have, the organization doesn't have, so forth and so on, to I've got lots, without putting in any additional money. I don't want to oversimplify and say from scarcity to abundance mindset, but sometimes it is that. And I remember, again, facilitating with you, I want to take us through to another story of impact, which is where you were working, or we were working together in George, where I found perhaps a similar thing. Same organization, very different person. The bus driver wasn't there, but it happened again.
Yeah.
So you must be telling the truth, Liezl.
I think the process is telling the truth, because
Yes.
if we put people in front of themselves,
Yes.
they open their eyes for opportunities that they didn't know they are the key for in an organization, because organizational life is what it's all about. If we are in a serving organization, we're talking about client systems. I know you work a lot in the corporate sector, but this specific context is the not-for-profit context. And their purpose is to serve communities and very specific needs. And they came into the room with almost a receiving understanding of their role. They receive funding to do the services. And I and you, we are witness that they walked out with the opposite mindset. But I don't want to overemphasize the word. But they walked out with not only the understanding, but the courage to put in place self-income generating projects that they designed while we were in the room. And we are following up, and some of those are already bringing forth income. So that change, I think that's where the impact lies, that matters.
And you touch on a very important point. Yes, we're speaking about the people in the room on that day, but there is there's the model, the business model for NGOs predominantly is apply for funding, write a grant or a proposal, receive the money, disseminate the money amongst whatever programs and projects we lead. But that money's now come to a naught for a lot of organizations, or very thin stream of money. I witnessed how the people in that workshop, when they arrived, it was a very physical change in people when they left. Their language changed. Their eyes were sparkling, and some of them even said, besides acknowledging and realizing that I've got these skills, they took it a step further, because the skills are just, they're here, they're human, they're with me. But then there is the gift of combining these skills, which you facilitate so beautifully. And then there's the other thing. So if that's what I have at my disposal right now, and I'm not going to spend more money to cross this proverbial bridge, what then in the organization is also there at my disposal? It's already there. I don't need to go and buy another something. I don't need to go and acquire a license for another something. So in one of your cases, and I don't want to go too much into the detail of it, but there was one lady who spoke to having a scenario where they have beds intended for a specific type of client. This is healthcare. When they left, that lady realized that my beds that are not being sold because the client that we wish to serve cannot access that bed for whatever reason was. I forget the reason. But they then changed their entire model and decided, okay, the beds I can't afford, I'm going to sell that to lifestyle and tourism.
Yeah,
but I need to generate some money.
Yeah, and for me, even though it's a not-profit story, it absolutely, the analogy holds across corporate, individuals, etc. And it is about the way we think. Let me just call it that instead of using the word mindset. But the way we think can either stifle us, hold us back, and it's because it's informed by our beliefs and our experiences, right? And so often we don't recognize how we are captives of our outdated beliefs. And so you can be in a system. In many cases, it's really about, yes, I have a job. I just want to make sure that I keep my job, and I just need to show up, etc. And too often people leave their hearts and their minds at the door when you step into work. And so I know in our work we often refer to the Gartner studies around the levels of engagement, right? Which really for me speaks to the next version about why is it that, and the Gartner studies are available, that only 23% of all employees, and pretty much around the world, including South Africa, are fully engaged, meaning they love what they do, they come up with enthusiasm, and they enjoy work as what they are, as part of who they are as human beings. And there's different numbers, but let's say 60% of people who show up at work hate being at work. They are what the studies refer to as quiet quitting, right? Meaning that they're there only because they want to get paid. And again, I'm sorry to generalize. I don't mean to generalize. But the point being, there's a large percentage of people who are switched off. They're looking up from management. Okay, what do you want from me? And how do I do the least and still get paid? As opposed to, I am here. How do I create meaning? How do I attach meaning to what I do, to who I am, and align my purpose with the purpose of my organization? And whether you work in IT, whether you work in construction, or whether you work in a non-profit, the same applies. Because if you're unable to then attach meaning to what you do, and you're switched off emotionally, mentally from what you do, and there's a distance that develops between what you do to get paid and who you are, you're actually in a downward spiral. And unfortunately, the majority of people out there it's those who are either got the job, the CVs in the job market, or looking for something else to do because they believe something else is going to be more meaningful. Yet if they're just able to look at the meaning of what they do, the possibilities open up, and it's endless. And then you have a bus driver who becomes an office manager. And you have people who otherwise have been ignored, giving an opportunity to shine, and not just progress in their careers, but love what they do, love their lives. And it's easier for them to love those around them because they are fulfilled human beings. And these things are possible. And the switch is just up here in our minds in terms of how we think about things.
I think, Franklin, you're helping me to go out of this session with one question of how do we cut out the noise and focus on the things that truly matters? Because that question I will carry with me when we exit this session. So thank you for that, because it helps me also to just realize those are the realities, but we are bombarded with so much noise.
And we're made to believe that we're not good enough, or we're made to believe that we will never be good enough. Not realizing it actually starts inside by just acknowledging who you are and where you're at, and allow yourself to have a dream, allow yourself to want to be better, and then moving towards that, giving yourself the agency and right to do that. And in Reinvention, that's the tools that we use to then say, okay, how do I create a stellar plan, to use a technical term, but just a plan that basically says, I don't know the future, but I know what I know now, and I know what I need to do next. And I'm going to do what I need to do next and see how it works. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening so intently, and I was sitting very much with myself right now,
Yes.
realizing I might be here alone, or we might be here as three.
Yes.
But there is, I'm not going to put I'm going
number.
to try and put a number to it. There's about 60 other reinvention practitioners in South
Absolutely.
Africa and Africa alone. What the number is for global, I'm too scared to say because I'm going to get it wrong, but it's
I
a
know
lot
it's
more than that.
250
But
at
we
least,
do
yes.
represent,
Yes, a global community.
yes,
Yeah.
but we do represent South Africa. We're always winning. We can't
Yes.
help winning. We do represent the largest number
Yes,
of CRPs
in one country.
in one country, which is really, really interesting. And when I was having that thought, something else came to mind, which is something somebody said to me. He said, yeah, but you guys are a little bit before your time. And if I wasn't me, and if we didn't know what we knew, my immediate response, it was very quiet, but I said, yeah, but that's why we're doing this stuff. Because we have to be a little bit a step ahead. Otherwise, how do we help our clients move and shift? We have to be, what are we? These lone rangers. Sometimes I know we feel a little crazy because we're talking about reinvention, and we talk about methodology, and we talk about the tool set, and we talk about the heart set. And most of our clients or the people that we work with sometimes just look at us blankly and they go like, what are you on about? You know, why are you trying to be ahead of the curve? And you mentioned it earlier on. You said that somewhere in the 1950s is when it was last a reality where businesses lasted for 75 to 100 years. We're in 2025. If you start a business now, you can expect that business to have a lifespan of around 5 to 6 years if it's still like that. And so but tell us, Liezl, why do you think it is that this work that we do is so critical for businesses now? If you want to take it to society, to the globe, take it there. And it really is about the speed of change.
The first thing that popped into my mind is, yes, we might be in front of time, of the need, but I also think what we do is we're trying to make it easier for people to face these realities of the change and the things that's happening that we don't have any control over. So to have a better understanding of what we do have control over and how we have influence over certain things, to make the things that we don't have control over a little bit easier. And if we can influence more people to get to that place where you can just make it easier for one person, one organization, one company, one system, I think we are winning a battle.
Yeah, and it is about demystifying this reinvention thing. It's actually very simple. It's just a language, but it is the simplicity of it is that most of us feel beaten down, right? Because reality is harsh, economy is tough, finding a job is tough, holding on to a job is tough, starting a business is tough, getting the business to grow is tough. But if we relax a little bit into it and say, okay, there's a lot we don't know, but there's also a lot that we do know. And it's about drawing distinctions between what we know and what we don't know, and being clearer about what we want and where we want to go, and mapping a process, a plan that allows us to learn and learn, rehearse, practice, test into the future. That you don't have to be the cleverest person in the world to make progress. You just need to have the courage to try something new and allow yourself to fail into it and autocorrect as you go to the next level. So I think if we just can loosen up a bit, relax into it, allow ourselves to fail and allow ourselves to grow and succeed. Because if you keep learning and if you learn fast enough, you get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about the speed of change. That's one thing. It forces us to make changes. And I suppose when we feel forced to make a change, the resistance sets in because, I don't know what I must do now. And then when I do know what I must do, I don't know how I must do it. And when I do know how I must do it, I don't know what I need to make that change happen. And so now I'm sitting and I'm looking at just the three of us, and also in my mind, I never see just the three of us. I see a picture.
Sure.
Usually those ones on Zoom where we're getting together at power-ups and you're seeing a lot more of us. And I go, just the other day, we were the Center for Reinvention for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what that did for us collectively, and we know what that did for us individually. Something happened the other day. Please tell us what happened in Gary's house the other day.
We broke it.
Why did you break it?
Because it wasn't fulfilling the purpose anymore.
It wasn't. But it was also time to break it. Because if we go around as facilitators teaching people about S-curves, your business S-curve, on your left side, it's this phenomenal growth, and on the right side, the decline side. And true to form, as practitioners, we can't be mechanics who don't fix our own cars.
Yeah.
And yes, we were forced, all of us, to find ourselves, not forced is a terrible word. We got really curious about what is it becoming to break, and when we got there and we discovered we're coming to break the entire thing. I'm sure you felt a certain way. I felt very uncomfortable. I felt like I shouldn't speak here because I'm scared to break this thing that isn't necessarily serving the purpose anymore. But in that same afternoon that it took to break Center for Reinvention, we also built something brand new. What was that?
Well, that's the Reinvention Academy Africa, which really allows us to plug into the global movement, because we really see reinvention as a movement more than anything else, but also to recalibrate who we're about and how do we bring value to our audiences, right? And find new ways of engaging. And that's one of the things that we've learned, is that often we underestimate people's intelligence, and we keep explaining what reinvention is about, and we lose sight of the fact that if you're scared, and a lot of people are just scared of the change, you can't hear, you stop listening. And so what we're doing now as a collective is say, how do we then move forward, demystifying this thing, helping others to see it's okay to try. It's okay to try new things. It's okay to dream. It's okay to imagine. It's okay to plan. And always start with what you've got. As long as you think, oh, I wish I had this and I wish I had that. Because if I had this and that, I could do that. You don't need whatever that is. If you can start with what you have, you can take the next step.
I think my big takeaway that day was you don't need to wait to become stuck. You don't need to wait to have a problem for this work that we do, and for the method, the mindset, the tool set. That's available and relevant and necessary even for organizations when you look from the outside are doing very well. I thought we were doing quite well. I didn't think that we needed to break the Center for Reinvention because I got used to it. But I walked away there realizing or feeling, experimenting firsthand what it feels like to reinvent, meaning make something brand new at a time where you didn't think it was necessary for a brand new thing. But what it did give us was longevity.
And I think I want to come in there because for me, I walked away with the understanding that at that stage we were all looking for somebody else to do it.
Yes.
Exactly.
We were looking at other people. But what happened is now we are
Driving.
part of that drive, part of the movement. If we don't do anything, nothing will happen or nothing will change. And I think back into the organizations, if we're all looking at the leaders, nothing will happen if we don't put in our own contribution. Everything will stay the same.
So Liezl and Franklin, we're going to need to be back in these seats.
Yes, we need
because
to
this conversation has only just begun, there's a good sense that it's going to be going another few times. The guests that you see on your next show might not be the three of us, or it might just be the three of us. We don't know, but that's the thing that we love the most. Give us uncertainty, and you give us a sense of knowing what it is that we must work with, because that's what we teach and that's how we live. It's really not something that we teach in a classroom. It's something that's embedded in us individually as well. So in this last few seconds, I think in terms of wrap up is, I want our guests to know that this is not theory. This is, yes, of course, we can present it in a classroom type or setting, but that's not how it's meant to work all the time. And I think we can all walk away with the good sense that reinvention, it's messy. It's not always clear. It's deeply, deeply human stuff. So yes, we could be up there with the flip chart and cookies and stuff like that, but ultimately we know that it doesn't matter whether we're working with corporates or NGOs or individuals, that we are working with humans. And I love that most about the work that we do. And so just in terms of what I want the audience to remember, if they remember anything, is that one toolkit based on the foundation of one good, healthy mindset or foundation that makes people and organizations ready for change. Different settings, just all the same stuff. And I think I want audiences to be really curious about how this work might benefit them, corporates.
Yeah, so as we wrap up,
Yes.
I just wanted to maybe also encourage audience to participate, give us comments, give us questions, and if there's a specific either sector or specific challenge that they would like for us to explore further or discuss, I think we would love to respond to that more specifically. This is just us sharing our experiences as practitioners. There's a lot more to this. And even if anybody would want to be a guest on our, like a client guest, say, solve my problem, you clever people or whatever, then we'd be happy to work with individuals. This is what we do day to day, with different client systems. But what's important is as we bring the concepts to the world, that it means nothing until we can actually make impact into the real world and with real circumstances and real people. But thanks for having us.
And so we do want those who are listening to tell us, should we bring this back? Yes, no. And if we do, what is it that you want to hear more of?
Yes.
For now, coffee's up. And this is the Reinvention in Practice live. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.